We live in the age of mobility, and we expect access to information and services anytime, anywhere. More than that, we expect a first-class digital experience. We expect fast performance and content that's tailored to our needs across all channels. It's a tall order. Hi, I'm Stan Gibson, and I'll be your host and moderator for this on-demand webcast. Joining me to explore how to deliver a great omni-channel customer experience are Mehdi Daoudi, CEO and co-founder of Catchpoint Systems. Welcome, Mehdi. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Stan.
Also joining us, Manav Mital, CEO and co-founder of Instart Logic. Welcome, Manav, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Stan. Great to be here.
Well, before we hear from Mehdi and Manav, I'd like to talk about some of the issues that people are facing today. Consumers expect anywhere, anytime access to information and services. Now that kind of access means a lot. It's about more than just a slick experience. It gives people the confidence and control they need to make decisions and manage their lives. And what consumers expect goes beyond mere access. They expect simplicity. It's something they've come to expect thanks to the excellent user interface design of smartphones and tablets. Customers expect things to just work, and they don't want to wait. But the experience goes beyond access and simplicity and fast response. Mobile and web experiences need to be personal and offer a very high degree of context. Of course, customers expect to use any of a number of browsers, but they expect, above all, relevancy, and that comes from a detailed user profile plus knowledge of preferences and location. The bottom line is, if you expect to win and retain customers, you will have to anticipate their needs. To respond to customers that are driving the digital agenda, businesses need to dramatically shift digital delivery to fit customers' needs. What you're doing should be a digital experience program, not a web or mobile technology project. As you consider every aspect of customer experience, you have to address every aspect of that experience in a concerted way. You can't implement a meaningful strategy in a piecemeal manner. But what does that mean? It means understanding which parts of the infrastructure are going to affect the customer experience and just how they will affect it. Let's take an example. Say a marketing department wants to put a banner on a company's site advertising a sale. Well, they need to make sure the banner won't take too long to load and affect the customer experience. Now, they also have to consider fulfillment, how much merchandise is in inventory, and how to handle spikes in demand. In short, there are a lot of moving parts. Now, the stakes are high in this quest, and if you don't rise to the challenge, the consequences could be quite dire. It wasn't so long ago that Blockbuster stores were everywhere, and a stop at Blockbuster to rent or return a movie was a regular part of our routine errands. But of course, that's not the case anymore, thanks to the massive shift in the way that people consume media. So when disruption happens, watch out. As delivery channels and customer expectations change, businesses that fail to rise to the challenge risk being disrupted to the point of extinction. The challenge we face is delivering a great omni-channel experience. Omni-channel means not only web and mobile, but in-store also. You should be able to order an item online and pick it up in the store, or buy the item online and then return it to a store. For this to happen, back-end systems have to talk to each other so the user has a clean and transparent experience. It's not enough to just have a web page that works on a desktop browser as well as a mobile phone. You need to work well to be optimized with customer insights at every customer interaction point. And you need to monitor those interactions to make sure your system is delivering the experience it should. So you might ask, how do you optimize for omnichannel? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's webcast, but basically there are 3 steps. First, align business strategy, customer strategy, and technology strategy. Second, foster a culture of digital innovation and build agility into your organization through your technology investments. 3, underpin technology decisions with customer-centric metrics. Use application performance monitoring tools. These monitor real user experiences to ensure your website operates at maximum efficiency. Implement an application delivery platform that leverages machine learning to optimize performance and utilizes a content delivery network, or a CDN, for delivery. You might ask, well, who's doing this today? Well, we really need to look no farther than Macy's. Macy's has done its homework and has optimized for omni-channel. The Macy's website delivers rich content and functionality for customers online. And many Macy's stores feature iPad docks in high-traffic areas. You can look at the store inventory on the iPad and then even order online. Another great example, the Starbucks mobile app. There's a lot of things you can do from this app, including preload payments, pay at a store, or check your Starbucks Awards points. You can do these things also from your desktop, of course, and the experience is seamless. Finally, you need to be able to analyze the customer experience. That will enable you to understand how well your investments in Omnichannel are performing. Understanding the specific devices, touchpoints, and interactions is the only way to know if your digital strategy will directly improve a customer experience and enable the customer journey that you are striving for. So, of course, it's an old axiom, you can't improve what you don't measure. So, for more on just how to do that, I'm going to hand things over now to Mehdi. Mehdi, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the great examples you've shared at the beginning of the presentation. One of the things I talk a lot about is that in the world we live in today, which is performance-driven and digital-driven, performance is the new fifth P of the marketing mix. You cannot go and start a business without having the performance as one of the key pillars of your business strategy. Performance is impacted, obviously, by geography. It's also impacted by the devices that all these consumers are coming from. And so having a strategy that is not focused on understanding how global your reach is or how diverse your users are is a strategy that will lead to failures. And the world we live in is a very complex one. So some of the things that are happening is the complexity is growing, especially in a world where people are moving towards cloud solutions. The customer expectation has been declining. Everybody wants their web pages to load as fast as Google. And there is this digitalization that is happening where every organization and every business has to have a digital component to it. On the right side of that presentation is we have this iceberg that we as technologists have to navigate to provide that great user experience. And because of this complexity, monitoring and understanding how each one of those components can impact your performance is critical. So you gave an example, Stan, with an ad loading slowly on a web page. This is one of the key things that we see today. But if you're outsourcing your DNS to a third-party company, how do you monitor your DNS? The same thing with CDNs. We also live in a world where a lot of these solutions, a lot of these systems are talking to each other via APIs. How do you make sure that an API system is performing well, but performing well all the time? That's one of the things that is critical. And as we're getting close to the Black Fridays and Cyber Mondays a few weeks from now, the high awareness is extremely important. So how do you do this? You need to deploy an arsenal of tools and solutions that are going to give you visibility into that end-user experience, into that performance mix. So you need to have your real user measurement solutions in place, your synthetic solutions, your network monitoring, understanding the network patterns, your internal monitoring tools. But what's even more critical today than ever before is the fact that the business and technology teams have to share common goals, and that can only happen by having business KPIs in place between the technology and the lines of business. So all these tools need to talk to each other, need to be integrated, or at least have a global view of all the telemetry that is coming from these solutions. But these are some of the required arsenals or tools that you need to have to ensure a great user experience. So at Catchpoint, obviously, one of the things we focus a lot on is the external view, coming in from the outside, trying to portray a performance overview from where your users are. We have 559 locations worldwide that allows you to test, monitor your solutions. So why do you need to do this? Very simple. There are three key outputs that are extremely important. First, you need to monitor. You need to know before your users are impacted that you're having a problem. We're listening to Twitter or to Facebook post about complaints is an okay solution, but let's be honest, it's not the most optimal one. So you need to monitor, you need to baseline. How do you know that what you're doing today is better than yesterday? The only way you can do that is by continuously monitoring your web services, your web servers, your web applications, your mobile apps, etc. So you can understand that every improvement, every release you have is a positive one, not a negative one. And finally, it's to benchmark. How do you know how you're doing in comparison to your competitors? So it's extremely important to rank yourself, not only to your direct competitors, but it's extremely important to compare yourself to some of the best of breed companies out there. Compare yourself to Google, compare yourself to Apple, compare yourself to Facebook. These are extremely important benchmark rules that you need to have. One of the things that is extremely critical and needs to be better understood, especially in an e-commerce world, is the network delivery chain. Your end users, as we said, are everywhere. They're on a cell phone tower. They are on the Wi-Fi. They are in China. So understanding how that is going to impact your performance is critical. Your end users are connected to what we call last mile network. The last mile network then connects to the backbone of the internet, and that's where your data centers or your cloud providers are connected. So what I brought with me today is an example of what not to do. So that example is with a big watch brand called Seiko, where basically this happened to me personally, where I was interested in a watch they just released. I went online and their website took 30 seconds plus to load. And the good thing is I own a monitoring company, so that made my life a little bit easier. And what I realized is if you're in Tokyo, the performance to the website was phenomenal. However, if you're in Los Angeles or worse in Paris, the performance was horrendous. And the reason why is because they didn't think globally. If you're doing a global campaign, you need to think globally. You need to have the right solutions to deliver that unbelievable user experience all the way to every single last mile you're trying to reach. And so if you're having a website and your users are everywhere, don't serve them content from Tokyo. That's lesson learned. Again, these are some of the pros of each monitoring solution that is available in your arsenal today. So on the synthetic monitoring side, I urge you to monitor from the specific locations on ISPs where your users are. Benchmark against your competitors. Make sure that you have the right alerting, the troubleshooting steps in place, because there is a component outside of the tool, which is the human component. How do you deal with the data you're going to be receiving? Measure the transactions. It's extremely important to measure every critical business transaction that your end users are doing, whether you're an online store, whether you're a SaaS platform. Make sure that your monitoring is deployed not only for your production environment, but around your QA or staging environment. Therefore, if there is a release problem, you can catch it earlier. Again, it's always about catching the problem before real users are impacted. And the benefit also of synthetic monitoring, it allows you to monitor your infrastructure. Every single data center, every single load balancer that you might have can be monitored and alerted on. On the real user measurement side, what's extremely important about it is it gives you that real user view. Every single interaction that is coming to your website is captured. You can also correlate that to the impact on revenue, so you can do some really nice correlations between performance and revenue. It can also allow you to monitor all the behaviors because your ecosystem of users is huge in terms of devices, locations, etc. So being able to understand that. Another correlation aspect is the performance and engagement. How long are people staying on the website? Are they abandoning, and why and where? And it also helps you drive some of the performance initiatives within your organization, learn from some of those slowdowns, and then go back and try to fix them, and then test, benchmark again, and then roll out. And so it allows you to also keep track of all the changes that are happening from a user perspective as well, all the path that the user takes to conclude the transaction.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Mehdi, for a very interesting discussion. I'd like to turn our attention now to the issue of performance and how to optimize performance. You know, we've all been in the position of wanting something online and wanting it now. In fact, you think about it, at any point in time and space, someone somewhere is pulling out a mobile device to access a website, and they want content instantly. 1 or 2 seconds is an eternity. Manav Mital, where can you take us with this discussion about performance?
Thanks, Stan. This is a really great topic for me to talk about, and especially both of you, Stan and Mehdi, made some excellent points in the beginning of the presentation. So Stan, you started this webinar by saying that we live in the age of mobility. And Mehdi, you started your section by saying everybody wants their web pages to load as fast as Google. And at Instart, we have done some research into this, and what we found after polling 2,000 US consumers in the age bracket of 21 to 45 years that 68% of them will not wait for a mobile page if it takes more than 5 seconds to load. And 75% of them will leave for a competitor if the site is too slow. In fact, $3 billion in revenue is lost annually due solely to slow loading web pages. And this is well-cited information from Fast Company and something which gets reinforced in all our customer conversations every day. And the primary driver for this is how mobile-first applications are architected and the challenges that they present to these legacy delivery solutions. So just to explain that point, that how these legacy delivery solutions lead to lost revenue, that's basically because of three big reasons. So the applications today are designed to be very rich, but they're accessed on mobile devices with typically weak and highly variable wireless networks, which leads to poor load times and abandoned transactions. And in a bid to make these applications and experiences very personalized and very dynamic, developers end up pushing a lot of code and a lot of information to the endpoint, to within the browser, and then that becomes a new kind of a surface area from the point of view of attacks and leads to security breaches. And then that creates other problem for these publishers, because once they suffer a breach, that's a very big brand problem that it's very hard to recover from. And also, like you mentioned earlier, Stan, agility is a super important initiative for all publishers, all digital content owners, and they try to rapidly experiment with different user experiences. They try to rapidly update the experience for different users with new product, new information, to customize it for different geographies. And the legacy solutions that are used for delivery do not support that model, which means outdated experience and outdated content for users. That translates also to lost revenue. This is where Instart comes in. Instart Logic has built an application delivery solution from the ground up for modern websites and applications. And our technology combines machine learning for performance with virtualization for security with a content delivery network for global delivery. And the whole service has a very rich and powerful set of APIs that lends itself to easy automation and agility for our customers. And while the benefits for our customers are manifold, the primary reason why we are seeing a lot of success in the marketplace is because we can help our customers deliver really rich premium experiences very fast and very securely to their online users. And on this slide, you see a few examples of our customers. One of them, a very large luxury handbag retailer who was very invested in performance improvement, in pursuing an omnichannel strategy. Mobile was a very important part of it, and switching to Instart Logic from a traditional CDN improved their site-wide performance by 2 seconds. That led to an increase in conversions by 20%. And when you're operating a multi-$100 million revenue stream, this type of a conversion increase is something which is rarely achieved by any traditional means. And this is an example that we have seen play out again and again with different customers in different verticals, such as e-commerce, where a customer like World of Watches saw conversions increase by 12%, and even in travel hospitality, where commune hotels saw their conversions increase by 25%. So to describe how our solution can afford these benefits and what makes it superior to these legacy delivery solutions, let me walk all of you through the technology and how it works. So over here, you see a typical application. As the user interacts with it, there's some code and some content which is resident on the device, either within the browser or inside the application, which then talks back to part of the application, the backend, that lives on some servers somewhere, either on the cloud or inside the data center. And all these components, they interact with each other and with different third-party services that are used intimately to develop these applications. This third-party service could be anything from a Facebook Connect to Google Analytics to Omnichannel or your developer's best friend's startup service. The way Instart works is, first of all, we sit in the path where we can inspect every single interaction which gets fired when a user uses the application. The way you integrate with the service is in exactly the same way as you would integrate with a CDN. You just do a DNS switch and you start going through our proxy server, which is deployed in the cloud. And then we have created a very lightweight JavaScript that you see in this diagram with the dotted blue rectangle that sits between the application and the browser and is completely transparent to the end user, and to use which our customers do not need to change their code in any way. But with this architecture, what we get access to is the ability to not only intercept but also control every single interaction in the system. The second component of our solution is basically a scalable platform that we have built that comprises of proxy servers distributed throughout the world that collect information about all these interactions and leverage this global view of different users interacting with different applications throughout the world and analyze and optimize every such interaction for both performance and security. And ultimately, we use machine learning to run algorithms on top of this information that we collect over long periods of time to make the service better, faster, and more secure on an ongoing basis. So here's a couple examples of customers that have leveraged our solution to drive better business results. Office Depot is one of our customers, and they are a very forward-leaning customer which is trying to leverage the omnichannel strategy in a very meaningful way. So if you look at the first image, right, you can see that if you do search or for a printer on Google, you can see an ad for that printer on Office Depot's website. And if you click on it, then they show you another link so that you can go to one of their stores to actually purchase that printer offline. And for them, they were trying to direct a lot of users and a massive number of their audiences towards their online content. But the challenge in front of them was they had a legacy website infrastructure that created performance problems and security problems. Also, they wanted to localize these experiences. They wanted to offer rich experiences and iterate on the content very quickly. But it used to take them hours, sometimes days, to implement any changes to their website because their underlying CDN infrastructure was very inflexible and prevented any real-time updates. These are the reasons they switched to Instart for better performance, for better security, and better agility, and saw, as a result, 15% increase in conversion rates. And they could decrease their changes that they made to the service. The cycle time for the changes went from 8 hours to less than 1 hour, which enabled them to move fast and iterate on those experiences really quickly. And they had now a much better end-to-end security model with Instart, all the way from the origin of the application, the backend where it lives, to the front end of the application, which is where the user interacts with their content. Another example of one of our customers is Washington Post, and for them, they are a very forward-leaning, very fast-moving technology shop which were investing in really premium mobile experiences. And it's a company which is all about pushing breaking news to end users and providing content and update very, very quickly as events happen in real time. And these were the challenges for them, that as they invested more and more in these mobile experiences, they found challenges with their CDN solution to be able to offer better performance for those sites and applications. They found challenges with their CDN solution to be able to update content and respond to news events in a real-time manner. And the application security model was incomplete because it only protected the backend, but all the code and all the content that ran within the browser was basically exposed. So they switched over to Instart and saw dramatic business benefits in the form of a 70% decrease in web page and mobile web page load times. And this was really important for them because it enables them to capture users in a much more efficient manner, because when now you search for something that some candidate says in a debate, you can click on the link and it loads really fast. And because Google also uses performance as a factor to order results in their search algorithm, and that also has an impact on all companies like Washington Post. It enabled them to update their content in real time and be very responsive to everything which is happening in the world out there, and also integrate multiple content management systems to provide a single view to their end users. And with that, Stan, it's back to you.
All right. Thanks very much, Manav. That's great information. Mehdi and Manav, I do have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. Let's say first I have a website that's unacceptably slow. What would be the first step I should take to get it back on track?
Sure. So as we said, you can't fix what you can't measure, what you don't measure. So the first thing I would try to do is understand what's not working, what's slow, how bad. And then obviously try to dive into it. The website is a very complex beast. You have front end, you have load balancers, you have databases, etc., etc. So first I'll start by measuring what bad means. Then I would try to dive into the various layers, peel the onion layers, until I figure out which component is slow, and then take proper action. It's extremely important to follow a very systematic approach to troubleshooting, and one thing at a time, because one of the things that happen, and I've seen this, is we try to fix 20 things, but we don't know what solved the problem at the end. So very tactical approach, one step at a time, peel the layers.
And also, another interesting technique that a lot of our customers and especially prospects use when they call Instart or when they ask us for advice is trying to understand what was the event that led this website or application to become unacceptably slow. Because typically it correlates to going after some new geography because people want to expand to, let's say, China, or they create a new website, or they want to offer a really rich personalized experience, so they end up changing the application. So what was the driver that made the application and the website unacceptably slow? And an advice we have for every single such publisher is to also have in their mind a clear model of what's their performance budget and what's their performance target. Because for them, that basically indicates how acute a problem is it that they're facing and manage their attention and resources accordingly.
Well, thanks very much, Manav and Mehdi. I'd like to ask you next, how would you recommend integrating location-based services, let's say beacon technology, with the mobile user experience so that performance still remains high?
Yeah, so location is something which has really changed in terms of expectations and the level of sophistication that customers are shooting for. And I remember just 3 years ago, we went online with an e-commerce company, and for them, the way they tackled geolocation was if you went to their web page, a dialog box the prompt would open up, and they would ask you to enter your zip code. And once you entered it, it would then load up the right experience with the right kind of inventory and store information in front of you. And today, people want to make that as seamless and invisible to end users as possible. And that's typically what also contributes the changing application architecture that Mehdi and I talked about, with a rich front-end component that tries to guess where you are, incorporate a lot of your local information, your social information, and also a back-end architecture which is very scalable and spread out that tries to very quickly then generate specific customized information and push it to the end users. And what our customers have seen, that as they migrate to such an architecture, they see much better user experience and much higher conversion rates. And there's lots of different tools which are available on the internet for enabling that, but that's the design principle from where you typically start.
Yeah, and what I will add here is these beaconing technologies, etc., are here to provide a better user experience. Companies rely on them from ads to retargeting, etc., etc. So they're here to stay. They provide a very valuable impact to the economy and to the businesses of these websites. But if you are a global company, or if your website is used, or mobile website is used by a variety of users coming from different endpoints in the world, or even in the US, for example, it's extremely important to make sure that all these third parties on your website are going to perform accordingly. And so it's very important to ask the question, what is your geo load balancing solution? Do you have servers everywhere? How are you handling load? As we approach the high season, we've seen over and over for the last 8 years we've been at Catchpoint, where basically a major e-commerce company will go down because of a third party that wasn't prepared to scale for the Cyber Monday traffic, for example. So it's extremely important to ensure that your website is extremely performing, and the weakest point is a third party usually on the site.
When it comes to analyzing user experience, I'd like to ask you about something that's been on the minds of IT people for a few years now. What are your recommendations for utilizing big data analytics to better serve customers?
So, not that I'm allergic to big data. I think collecting a lot of data, everybody can do it. We're inundated with that. I think it's time for people to start thinking more about smart data, or how can this data going to help me make better business decisions or technology decisions. So it really starts by, first, let's make sure that we are measuring the right things, we're collecting the right data, the right frequency, using the right mathematical models, etc., etc. So the data can then tell you a story, can help you make a decision. This is something that we see in our industry in the monitoring side, where there is an arm race for collecting a lot of data, and under a lot of data, everybody crumbles and literally falls flat. So even machine learning robots are going to quit. So this is important. Measure, collect the right data, the data that you need to make the right decisions, rather than a fire hose approach. That's my take on that.
So big data is a very important initiative in every single enterprise that I know of. And the reason is that data is information and information is power. But as Mehdi rightly pointed out, just a haystack of information not analyzed and which is unanalyzable is basically meaningless. So my advice is, the way most enterprises are doing, they're trying to figure out how to harness the massive amount of information they generate about their consumers, their buying patterns, their history, all the correlations across the various different events. They look at vendors who basically do the same. Companies like Catchpoint, companies like InstantLogic, we sit in the path of massive amount of data transfer and massive amount of data which is generated by logging. And the smart vendors are the ones who leverage that information to make their services better in an automated way and can transfer those insights back to customers.
One more thing I'd like to add here, because Manav hit on so many good points. Another thing that I've seen very successful that has been happening more and more, in my opinion, in some of these enterprises is, if you're collecting data that is not mapped to a business outcome, then that data becomes idle and stale very quickly. So having the data from the technology stack, from the purchasing stack, etc., all of this needs to be able to answer questions. How do we run our business better? What can we do to run our business better, faster, optimal, etc.? So if there is no correlation between some of these data points, then again, you're collecting the wrong thing.
Here's a question that might be on the minds of some of our audience. Will additional training or staffing be required to implement the Catchpoint Instart solution?
So I'll take that to start with. So, there is most of the companies that buy these solutions already have the staff and the training to manage, to deploy, to look at this data, at least on the Catchpoint side. So there is very minimal training needed.
For Instart, the answer to that question is no. We have built some really amazing technology. We have filed a lot of different patents. It's very differentiated. But the interface to our service is exactly the same as that of a CDN. So you do not require any new training or staffing to implement Instart. In fact, on a day-to-day basis, the effort required to maintain and run the service actually goes down dramatically compared to a legacy CDN or would-be customers are using.
Mehdi and Manav, we have time for one more question before we close, and I'd like to ask, how can you optimize omni-channel delivery globally? Manav, I think you mentioned China. How about China in particular? Can China present additional challenges?
Yes, absolutely. So China is a very important and a seemingly very complex initiative that every large enterprise that we talk to is facing these days. Because as we know, the economy, the digital economy in places like China, India is booming at a very fast clip. Every company that does business online wants to tap into it, but specifically when it comes to China and unique challenges that the Great Firewall of China places in terms of delivery and your ability to push content to users over there, it just becomes a head scratcher of an issue for these companies trying to undertake it. And that's one of the first questions that we get asked when we go into implementation details with our prospective customers, that can you handle China? Can you improve performance in China? Because that's where a lot of these legacy CDN vendors struggle. And our answer is always yes. And that always helps us accelerate our conversations.
So China is a head scratcher, as Manav put it so nicely. You know, the challenges there is obviously this Great Firewall of China that basically is here not only to protect content, but mostly to also filter content. And having a Chinese strategy, a Chinese delivery strategy is on the forefront of so many of our customers as well. And it really starts with having a strategy in China doesn't just mean, hey, we're going to launch a website in China or we're going to open it up to the Chinese users. It really starts with, like, do you have the right content? And one of the biggest mistakes we see is people that just take a website and makes it available to the Chinese end users with Google tags or Facebook objects, etc. And those things are blocked. So you need to have a content strategy for China where you strip down your website to remove most of the third parties because those are blocked in China. Then you need to monitor. And so, for example, at Catchpoint, we have 60 agents around China, growing to 90 very soon to be able to provide even more visibility to our customers. The other thing is a lot of the mistakes that people make is, for example, we have a customer that is a luxury watch company, and obviously China is a huge market for them. But their DNS infrastructure was in Switzerland. And so every time somebody had to look up that domain, they had to go all the way back from China to Switzerland. Not the most optimal route, especially with the firewall. And especially when we are talking about DNS, which is using UDP, very error-prone protocol. That's one of the first mistakes. The second biggest mistake is they sign up for a CDN, and that CDN has a data center in Japan or in Hong Kong. And that's it, we have a Chinese location. No, Hong Kong and Japan are not China. You need to have infrastructure in China. Your content distribution network must have presence inside mainland China. That's extremely important.
Well, thanks very much, Mehdi and Manav. Well, that is all the time we have in this on-demand webcast. Sincere thanks to Mehdi Daoudi, CEO and co-founder of Catchpoint Systems, and to Manav Mital, CEO and co-founder of Instart Logic. Thanks to both for sharing their insights on how to create a great omnichannel experience and a successful digital delivery strategy. For more information on this topic, please click on the green Resources icon on your screen. And thanks for joining us for Catchpoint Systems, Instart Logic, and IDG. I'm Stan Gibson.